Hi, March 12th, 2026, and this is Dr. Dina Churchill, and I'm discussing a book report and my thoughts on 22 Murders. This is a national bestseller by Paul Palango, Palango. I'll post an article with a picture that I wrote attached to this video. 22 lives lost. One province shaken, and a nation still searching for answers. Now, 22 murders, that sounds like a murder mystery, right? You might be thinking it's a murder mystery, and you'd be partially right. But it's a nonfiction. This is a true life story that happened in Nova Scotia, about an hour from where I live. And that tragedy continues to burn in the minds and the hearts of those who believe that truth matters. That truth matters. So Paul, in this brilliant national bestseller, examines the shootings that happened in Nova Scotia, April 2020. In fact, he dedicates the book to the victims and their families. So 22 Murders is an investigative journey, let's say, of the massacre and cover-up that happened in Nova Scotia, in the largest mass killing in the history of Canada. So on the first few pages, Paul gives maps of where these hits took place. Because even being in Nova Scotia, I couldn't really see, and I imagine how one man, a denturist named Gabriel Wortman from Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, could travel in a 12-hour period over 50 miles, killing 22 people, burning cars, terrorizing families in a 12-hour shift, avoiding all law enforcement until the very end, where apparently they caught him in Enfield at the big stop. But so Paul helps put the details together, not only of where the events happened, but the timing of events and the timing of the tweets that went out. And he interviewed the victims and their families, and he interviewed people in his community because he lives about an hour on the other side of where these shootings happened. So in his book, he also gives, the cottage of Gabriel Wortman. He gives a picture of Gabriel and his common-law wife, Lisa Banfield, who apparently now has written a book herself on how terrible he was and what a vicious man this denturist was. Likely he had some kind of superhuman powers or something. I don't know. I don't think he has a background of being a Navy SEAL, although he does have 3 cousins that were in the RCMP that I didn't realize until I read Paul's book. But Paul also has a picture of the RCMP vehicle that he used, Gabriel Wortman, to kill the 22 people. And he also has pictures of footage that was captured of the apparent, of the car, I guess, and the fires that took place, and puts it all into perspective with the details. He also has, information, and he's written many books about the history of the RCMP in Canada. So he had that history to draw on, and there's a lot that I'm learning about this federal government department. But he interviews, like I said, people in the community, families. He really digs into the details, like what any good journalist, I imagine, would do, right? Keep digging, asking questions, following the trail, even when it becomes uncomfortable, which is a quality that I'm learning to appreciate in my life over the last few years. And whether you agree with some of the facts that he's presented here or not is really irrelevant, but you can appreciate the detail that he's put into this book of over 500 pages. And the bottom line is, when transparency is missing, trust disappears with it. When transparency, and he says this, when transparency is missing, trust disappears with it. So for those of us in Nova Scotia and those whose families, the families of loved ones that were killed in this massacre, and for the law enforcement officers who still believe in truth and justice, are we getting the full story about what happened? And if you think we're not, what can you do about it? You know, I understand the whole going against mainstream institution and the pain and problems that brings. You know, it's your life and your livelihood on the line, right? If you don't sing the tune and read the script they're wanting you to read, you know, you become a target. And I've seen that in my own chiropractic practice. You know, I had a family chiropractic practice for 23 years. I sat on the board approving, even, you know, helping approve advertising and governance of our profession. So that profession turned on me when I started to talk about sex trafficking and also the bioweapon shots. Now, the sex trafficking part I haven't talked too much about because it involves my own family. So I've been kind of quiet about that. But let's just say institutions that want to silence you have ways of doing so. But I realize, you know, that speaking truth and turning your pain into purpose is important. And to not give up on that. I have a book that I have written. Thank you for the people who have purchased it. It's on my website, healthtruth.blog, about empowering yourself through these controlling matrices. The publisher I've had some problems with. They offered me this week a 50% discount in the $8,000, almost $9,000 that I paid already because they've slowed down the publishing. You know, I guess it's information that they don't want to get out there. My name was put on an injunction by a Supreme Court judge to stop speaking at rallies. You know, so I understand personally, professionally, that it takes, I don't know, a lot of courage and a little madness maybe, you know, to speak out. And it's not easy, right? But all that external pain, right, becomes almost inconsequential if you're listening to the message of your own soul and if you're reaching for a higher authority. So, how does that apply to 22 murders? Well, recently I said to a family member, I'm going to look more into this sex trafficking, especially in our own family circles. And the family member said, well, let me talk to my RCMP contact. And I said, well, just ask the RCMP contact if they believe that one man did all these murders. If he believes that and stands by that, then likely he's part of the problem. So as I was reading through, I have to admit that, you know, there were times when I was feeling, and I'm still not finished, by the way, so I may give a full book report with anything that I missed, but I must admit to times feeling kind of disappointed and discouraged, you know, when you see systems that appear closed or unaccountable in something like 22 murders in the one night. You know, the future seems a little bleak, doesn't it? And then I had to shake myself and say, you know, Dina, wake up. This is the solution. This is the change. It's not being silent. It's not being kept down. We are the change, right? It's not the institutions that hold power. It's the men and the women and the children that create the institutions that hold power, just like AI. AI is not powerful on its own. It was created by a human. It takes your questions It's funny, when I was asking AI to do a book report on the 22 murders, they edited out some of the important details and I had to go back and, and fill it in. But the systems, is my point, are created by humans. Humans are the link. I know this is going to sound a little metaphysical, but humans are the link between the earth and the heavens. And these controlling systems harness that loosh or that emotional energy for their own benefit. They harness that in order to get you to comply. So my book, 8 Steps to Aligning to Your Power, talks about that. Talks about how to transcend systems. And speaking your truth is part of that. But there's a lot of other steps in order to get to that point. And the book is not just words, it feels like a light transmission. So I think it'd be helpful for you. Whether or not it's ever published in print is irrelevant to me now, really. As long as the information is out there, I feel like I've done my service. I'll have to work on the next book now. So again, we hold the love and the power and the wisdom for change. Now, I've been criticized, quite recently actually, but many, 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 many times for being cruel and unfeeling and unkind and uncompassionate, because I refuse to sit for any length of time in pain without doing something about it. Because come means together or companion, passion means pain, a companion in pain. That's the first step. It's an important step. It's really important to acknowledge that you're pained, right? And then you're facing the pain honestly. It gives you something to kind of work towards. But that's only the first step. Then empathy is really what empowers. Sympathy stagnates, empathy empowers. Because it carries a different energy. Right? It recognizes that suffering is what, it recognizes that suffering stagnates, but you need to put that pain into purposeful action in order to move you forward. It asks us to transform the pain and use it as fuel into purposeful action. So when I hear somebody has died, I will say, I'm sending you love, to find the blessing in the challenge. To say, I'm sorry for your loss, boom, you leave it in sympathy. You're leaving the person sad. It's important to acknowledge the pain, but then give them help them balance that. And the way to balance pain is purposeful action. It's moving forward. So I think that's a really important point. And I think this is the key for us in moving forward, is turning our pain into purposeful action. So I am compassionate because I do sit with pain. I've sat with my own pain this week. But then I have to slap myself, and I'll slap the people that I love most and say, okay, this is the situation. How do you want to empower yourself? Or do you want to sit there forever in pain? Coach many women who've lost children, lost through death, or they've been departed in some way. And I realized in my own situation that the grief is often paired with guilt, those emotions that hold that person trapped. But they're too scared to speak or even to acknowledge their own emotions. Yes, you're sad. Now let's use that sadness to empower yourself. So I highly, highly recommend this book. I think it's brilliant. Not just, it's not sensationalizing violence in any way. It's empowering. It's empowering us beyond the institutions, beyond those things that keep you, that appear to keep you trapped, into speaking truth, from a higher platform. And I'll post, I just did my own book review, basically kind of what I've said now. I just posted in an article on healthtruth.blog. So I'll attach this to here, but 5 stars for this book. And like I said, I'm still not reading it, but with the detail and the explanation and the really non-biased way in which Paul writes it is inspiring to me, and I hope maybe to you too. So, healthtruth.blog, I'll post. The name is 22 Murders by Paul Palangio, and the message in this really is inviting you to look at your own situation, to know that, to find your truth, and then to have the courage, right, to stand and speak about it, right? Acknowledging the pain, what we've all been through, the whole COVID crisis is step one. But step two is taking that. What can you do with what you know? And whether you're a stay-at-home mom, or you're a constable in the RCMP or the Halifax Police, or you're in the communications network and you receive some of those messages. I mean, what can you do in your life right now to empower yourself and use your thoughts and your words, because your words create our beautiful new future. Your words and your actions to, again, create a new life and a new future for ourselves. Not to get bogged down into where we've been and to stagnate in your pain, but to empower yourself through inspired action. So I'd invite you to reach for the stars, envision, and then put the action steps in place to achieve your best. And most of all, enjoy the journey. This is Dr. Dina signing out.